Welcome to our webinar. Good afternoon to our West Coast families, good evening to the East Coast, and good day to all of our families joining us from around the world. Before I turn things over to my colleagues from Housing and Dining Services, I have just a few housekeeping items. Number one, you can view tonight's session with live captioning using the link that we'll share here in the chat box. Number two, this session is being recorded. We're going to send you a link to view it just as soon as it's available. Number three, we'll answer questions at the end of this session, but you may of course submit them at any time throughout the session using the question box on your screen. And families, number four, if we don't get to address your question tonight, please watch for updates to our frequently asked questions online. We're going to offer another webinar about spring housing later in January when we send your students their housing details. And finally, number five, you are always welcome to reach out to questions to auparent@american.edu at any time. With that, families, I'm Karen Casella. I'm your Associate Director for Parent and Family Engagement here at AU. I'm a double eagle, and I'm going to pop back behind the scenes and let my colleagues take the lead from here. I'm going to start off with Chris Silva, our Director of Housing, to get things started.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you for the wonderful start of the webinar. Welcome again to all those participating in this conversation tonight. Again, my name is Christopher Silva. I'm the Director of Housing at AU, and my gender pronouns are he, him, his. Tonight, me and several colleagues are going to explain, clarify, and answer questions regarding the spring 2021 mid-semester residential experience, which is an effort that we've dedicated a great amount of time in planning, and one that we're very hopeful that students were going to be interested in participating. We know that all of you, just like us, just like myself, have been anxiously waiting to return to campus, to seeing their peers, seeing their colleagues, and so we understand how important this is for you. Thank you as well for patiently waiting as we've taken the time to develop all these processes and efforts to bring students back. All of these efforts that we're going to be talking about today are part of a larger strategy to bring all students, everyone back to campus in fall semester of 2021. Please know that everything that we discuss here tonight and in our documents and on the website, all of our plans have taken into account lessons learned from our campus operations this fall semester, from the experiences of our peers in other universities, both in DC and around the world, as well as best practices from national and international associations. So in our conversation tonight, what are we going to do? We're going to be explaining to you about housing and dining during this experience. We're going to be talking to you about the timeline of the program, when do we apply, when will you know about your room, how and who can apply, where are students going to live, what is dining going to look like, and also other details related to the campus, the expected campus operations. So I'm now going to ask my colleague Ashley to introduce herself and explain to us a bit more about this housing experience. Ashley.
Thanks so much, Chris. Hello, everybody. Very good to see you all, sort of virtually. In my mind, there's a room full of people, and I'm excited to be in front of you, and I cannot wait for that to happen again. So as Chris mentioned, the first thing we want to touch on here today is really when will this experience happen? When will the mid-semester residential experience take place? And that will happen, we're anticipating move-in to be March 4th to 14th. And then for our move-out period to conclude by May 5th. And so roughly for students, depending on your date of arrival, that would be an 8 to 9 week experience, depending on when you arrive. So the most important part of how do I get myself in to be here for this period is the application process. And those will go live right when we come back from the winter holiday break, and they'll be open from January 5th to the 18th. And for those of you who may have accommodation requests that you'll be submitting, either standing ones that you have with the institution or ones that you'll be submitting new for this spring 2021, those requests are due by January 13th. so that they can have full review from our colleagues in our accommodations office. And then room assignments will be sent out to all of our students who have joined us on January 29th, so that you can begin planning and exploring virtually what some of those housing options look like and what those residence hall spaces may look like in different buildings and different types. And so when it comes to who will be joining us for this experience, Chris mentioned that one of the things that we've deeply appreciated is the willingness of our families and our loved ones and our students to give us information about what might be helpful for you all when looking at how we continue to ramp up for the spring and into the summer and next fall. And what we've heard a lot from our first year students, which I think for many of us is not a surprise because so much has had to be taken away from you throughout your experience, from the transition from high school into your time here with us at AU. You have adapted and shown resiliency beyond what, quite honestly, I think I would have been able to do as an undergraduate. And so we want to make sure that as we're looking at who's coming back, that we're hearing and speaking to those folks who are saying, yeah, this is something for me. This 8 to 9 week experience really would help ground my time with AU and help me prepare for what my next year will look like. And that predominantly for us has been first year students. We've heard from many and many of you. And so the priority in line with what we've heard back on some feedback will be for our first year students. But of course, knowing that we certainly have other undergraduates at other levels who are interested in applying, and you are welcome to please apply, and we'll be granting those based on space availability as we move through the application process. Chris, do you want to talk a little bit about move-in?
Yeah, definitely. So after continuing with the sort of a time frame that Ashley mentioned, after students apply and they receive their confirmation of their room space, students will be preparing for the move-in process. And so students will be pre-selecting a move-in date and time via our housing portal. And that is a way that we're going to be using to space out the move-in days and the number of people moving in at a certain time in the different buildings. That's a process that we've used in the past. That is what we would have used in the fall semester should we have had on-campus housing in the fall, and something that we part of our campus logistics. And so students will be able to bring up to 2 registered guests to support them during their move-in, and the dates for that move-in are going to be between March 4th and March 14th. And so the logistics and the details on how to do that will all be involved in your housing portal, the same place that you apply for on-campus housing. Then a little bit more detail about the placement. Where are students going to be living in? So all the students part of this effort, part of this experience, are going to be living in a traditional style residence hall, which is the majority of our residence halls are traditional style residence halls. You can expect that to be a bedroom that usually would have fit 2 students. In this case, for this residential experiencing, we're just having 1 student per bedroom, and with community style bathrooms, as well as other shared community bathrooms on the floor. The buildings all have, as I mentioned, because they are singles as opposed to doubles, have a reduced residential capacity. And across campus also, we're experiencing a reduced residential capacity. Again, just to make sure that we're mentioning this, because I know we've had several questions from students, is why this model, or why this placement? This is exactly the same placement that we would have done in the fall semester for students, and one that takes into account all the different health and safety guidelines and lessons learned that we've had from colleagues across the United States. in that had universities that opened during this fall semester.
So as Chris mentioned, a lot of what's being taken into consideration is the health and safety of our students, and all of that has really merged into modifications across AU's campus and how we are experiencing AU now as opposed to a year ago. And so some of those testing and health modifications, students who will be living on campus starting in the spring semester will be required to be tested for COVID twice a week. That also includes any of our faculty and staff who may reside on campus, so myself included in that. And any live-in guests that we have will also be included in that 2 times a week rotation for testing. Any students who are traveling to campus, just as an aside, and faculty and staff who may be traveling to campus but not living on campus will also be part of that testing rotation, being tested once a week. And so students who may test positive for COVID-19, we are hopeful that those numbers will be low, but realistically, based on numbers and what we're seeing in trends in terms of COVID rate positivity and transmission rates, we know that we will likely see a handful of folks who do test positive for COVID-19. And so those students will temporarily relocate into designated isolation housing on campus. So that will be an entirely separate building that will only house students who are managing their COVID-19 symptoms, and then they will be cleared by our student health center before returning back into the full student population. Many people have been asking now, as we know that a vaccine is being distributed and tested and widely used across the United States, what will that mean for me if I receive a COVID-19 vaccine? And students, faculty, and staff, regardless of their vaccination level, will still be required to follow all of our local and university protocols and regulations as it relates to COVID-19. And so the predominant those predominant modifications that we're seeing are things that are not atypical to anyone across really the rest of the country. So we're looking at, think about your time on campus as sort of being like in a grocery store, right? You're going to be still physically distant from folks who are standing near to you. You're going to have that face covering on at all times. We're going to highly encourage you to hand wash and sanitize as needed, and really just ensure that physical distance between us and the people around us. And so one other point to note with that, when it comes to our isolation housing, we've also had a handful of questions come forward about, what is related to the room type and the building type that was chosen for the mid-semester experience. And so as Chris mentioned, along with these building types and the styles being more closely aligned with what our students would typically be living in an academic year, one of the benefits is that it allows us to provide the most condensed space for students who may be experiencing symptoms of COVID-19. And so they'll be able to stay in a space that has their own self-contained bathroom, and it contains really for us a lot more for that student. It makes them more comfortable in the event that they are not feeling very well for a period of time. And so one of the most important things as students start to ramp back up and they come back to campus is really, what does it look like for dining on campus, and what does that mean for me, and how can I access different services on campus? And so I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Anne-Marie to talk a little bit about the dining program for the mid-semester residential experience.
Thank you, Ashley. I'm Anne-Marie Powell. I'm the Director for Dining and Auxiliary Services. And we're excited. We're very excited to see students back roaming around into our dining location. We can't wait to see you. All students who will be coming back will be required to be on a 100-block meal plan, which will come with $400 in Eagle Bucks. We are, just like every other area, we're committed to helping our small businesses in the area. And our $400 in Eagle Bucks gives the student the opportunity to get a taste of DC, to not just have campus food, but to be able to have DC from our local vendors in the area to help support them, and also to let you know that they can get it delivered. So we have a delivery options. Most of all our vendors offer some kind of delivery option, so it gives them a wide variety of choices in cuisine to choose from. As far as our on-campus dining, we're going to offer a traditional dining. Most of our dining locations will be grab and go. We will offer mobile ordering, so they can order ahead, pick up. We have seatings available in our Mary Graydon Center, our student center, that students can sit and share a meal with someone, or if they just want to take it back to their room, that option will be available to them.
Thanks so much, Anne-Marie. So as Anne-Marie started to share a little bit about the dining options on campus, we know that a lot of the questions coming forward about what will this experience look like have to do with the day-to-day of being on campus. And does this mean, with our restrictions, that I'm going to be alone in a bedroom all day because that is not what's interesting to me? And I think that those questions are really well formed and well placed. And I think one of the important things to note is AU has, since August, when we made the decision to go fully virtual, our top priority has been the health and safety of all of our students and our community members, and that goes beyond AU and into the district as well. And so one of the things that's really important to note is that we will continue to increase the availability of on-campus options for activities as conditions allow. And so that's something that's really important, I think, to note is, as someone who has been on campus every day, living here as a staff member, I have seen our students take in stride the modifications that they've been asked to adapt to, and to still find ways to healthily and safely engage in the campus community, whether it's been physically distant in our student center, or it's been sitting outside and still being in conversation and working on projects together. And so that really, I think, sets us up well for the spring as we look to expand some of these options on campus. So a couple of the things that you certainly I'd like to highlight as it relates to the residential experience in particular is we will still have our residence life professional staff available for virtual support predominantly, but we will still be available for in-person emergency response should that be required. One of the extended modifications of this semester when it relates to guests being permitted in the residence hall has been that we have adjusted to say only folks who live within AU owned or operated properties can be permitted as a guest. So what that means for us, and the importance and nuance in this, is it really helps us narrow down any contact tracing should that need to be made in the event that someone does unfortunately test positive for COVID-19. And it gives us a little bit more control over ensuring that the folks that are coming and going within the residence halls are part of our network of testing that's ongoing at the university. And so students can certainly, if they live in two different residence halls, would be able to visit one another. But if my best friend lives off campus and they were to come to campus, even if they're an AU student, they wouldn't be able to visit me in the residence halls, but we would still be able to interact on the main campus and any of the other public buildings that are open for use. So in conjunction with that, modified and continuing to expand access to some of our campus services like the shuttle. The fitness center has recently started to test out students being able to reserve time and go in and to use those facilities, which has been, I think, a huge benefit to the students who have taken advantage of that. And we look forward to seeing more of that in this spring. And then, of course, the library and student center, which have been open serving students all semester long, will remain in use, in operation for them. Some of the medical and mental health services that one may seek out are still available, both in person for our student health center and virtually through our counseling center, including emergency drop-in hours every afternoon, Monday through Friday. And then again, those physically distanced opportunities, one of the things that we really want to commit to in the residential experience is we know that folks want to be seeing each other in person. And we know that we also have to balance that with the safety of everyone who's both working here and who's living with us in the residence halls. And so while we haven't fully defined, because we want to make sure that we're taking every bit of information into consideration as we get closer to the March start for the mid-semester experience, we do hope to be offering more in-person, physically distant opportunities as the weather and conditions allow. And so for those of you who apply and will be joining us, we will be giving you that information as quickly as we can and as best as we can. And certainly one other piece that's not noted here, knowing that so many folks who are interested are within our first year community, and you may have never been to campus before, we're certainly taking that into consideration in terms of thinking through how we can bring you to campus and help orient you in a way that feels really grounding for your new surroundings here at AU, but then also in the surrounding community. And that allows us to do that as safely as possible. So Chris, would you like to talk a little bit about our next steps?
Yes, thank you, Ashley. I'll be glad to. So what happens now? Where do we go from here? I imagine that many of you want to go ahead and apply. And so in the right when we come back from the break, which is Monday, January 3rd, you're going to be receiving an email from AU in your AU email address with the application link. So this email will go out to all the undergraduate students the same way that the announcement for this experience was sent. And so wait for that email and you will find the application link there. During this time, until you get the application, you can become familiar with all these aspects that we've mentioned here in a little bit more detail. Even there's a lot more information about the process, questions about financial aid, questions about billing, and other details. And so please visit this website that we have on screen, which is american.edu/OCL/housing for all the information, as well as contact information from different offices, from student accounts, AU Central, One Card and Dining, and in other peer offices. We are open. Our Housing Residence Life office is open. The university is open until Wednesday of this week, until 5 p.m. on Wednesday this week. And so if you have any questions, you're welcome to reach out to us, emailing, calling, as well as, and I always like to highlight this, that you're welcome to chat with us Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. We just, even though our office closes at 5, we're chatting until 4, so they're able to actually work with you and finish that chat. And where you're actually chatting with a live person, not a robot, not a bot, a real colleague, and so that we can help you there. That's something that we're encouraging all students to utilize. So again, please note that our offices are closed from Thursday, the 24th, until January 3rd. And so we'll reopen on the 4th on Monday. Applications are open noon on the 5th, on Tuesday, okay? So this slide is going to remain up so that you can copy that, you can see the link, so you can go to the website while we are answering questions. And I know Karen's gonna take us there.
Thanks, folks. We have got a lot of time left for questions and answers, which is great. So I'm going to start with some of the ones that came in as you all were speaking. Anne-Marie, I want to come back to you for a second, because in order for students to access the residence halls and to leverage their meal plans, they're going to need their ID card. Can you explain what that process is going to look like?
Sure. Basically, we'd like for you to start getting your best picture ready now. Remember what picture you think makes you look the best. Get it ready. It's a passport size photo, but we let you smile. With passport, you can't smile. We do let you smile on your photo. So that's going to be a great, get it into us. The link will get up on the website, so you'll know exactly where to send it to. Once you're assigned your room, your key will be set to let you get into your resident hall, open your door, and we will be giving you more steps on where you can actually pick it up on your move-in.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. Chris, I'm going to come to you. So when we first shared our initial plans about this in October, we were using some pretty general terms, right, about how we were going to prioritize first-year students, and a couple hundred students were going to have this opportunity. So people are really wanting to know more about what is our selection process going to look like? What's the priority, and what are the chances of their incoming class of 2024 first-year student to actually be able to participate?
Great question, Karen. So I would say the answer to that question is that the chances are very high that a first-year student, current first-year student, will be able to participate. So we have nearly 1,250 spaces available for students to be part of this experience. And we hope that first-year students will apply. We have seen from the surveys that we've sent, as well as participation in this webinar, that the overwhelming majority of students interested are first-year students. And we're very confident that they, if they apply, they will be able to get in. We will do our best to place students in close proximity to others that they may already know. Perhaps those are friends, or perhaps those are individuals that have been part of their learning community or other organized groups that are part of our residential experience. At the same time, we know that this is an experience for students to get to know others, and so we'll also take that into account in placing students in as we select them to live in the residence halls.
Great. So yeah, we definitely had questions about the LLCs and honors, so I'm so glad that you're able to help us answer that. Ashley, as you might imagine, a lot of families are really hoping that this is the best way for their students to finally get to really meet their classmates, right? Because Zoom doesn't really hit that mark for a lot of folks. Can you help us get a feel for what this might look like on campus, right? When students are here, like, can they leave their rooms, right? Can they visit with each other in their rooms? Are we going to have structured programming? Like, any other insights or hints at what you think people can reasonably expect?
Sure, absolutely. One, we do not want you staying exclusively in your room by yourself all of the time. That sounds a little bit terrible. And also, like, I get bored of myself pretty quickly. I don't know about some of y'all, but there's only so much Netflix and like interneting I can do before everything needs a sort of recharge, right? So I think, Karen, that's a great question. I think some of those pieces, actually, I would look to what this fall has looked like. And so students are absolutely welcome to be around one another on campus. We just ask that students are following those modification guidelines of remaining physically distant at 6 feet apart from one another and wearing those face coverings at all times. You know, I think our community is heavily reliant on, and I think our students are actively aware of the community effort that it takes to ensure that our COVID rates stay low. And that's really by doing the simple things that we know work. And so that physical distancing, that face covering, that hand washing is going to be key. And those three components allow us to see students doing things like sitting 6 feet apart within the Mary Graydon Center and talking through coursework, or choosing to have a physically distanced lunch inside Mary Graydon Center or outside. There are still students who are outside on blankets. That might feel overwhelming for some people, but as someone who grew up in the cold, it's still totally pleasant. And so I can see the appeal for that. I think we're also still seeing students actively using campus as a way to de-stress, right? Taking walks around the beautiful campus itself and in and around the neighborhood. And so when it comes to some of those programmatic aspects, I think we'll certainly be looking to connect students virtually first. I think our method from our team will be that virtual connection, getting you to see each other. And part of that, I know folks might be like, ooh, more virtual stuff. I don't like, that's not for me. I think the important piece is we're looking to use that as a connection. And so if I meet Chris for the first time and we realize that we are both moderately obsessed with coffee, which is pretty accurate, and we decide to go over to the DAB or the Bridge and pick up coffee on campus and choose to then take a walk, that's totally fine. We're just looking to minimize the amount, the large gathering sort of within the residence halls, right? So that 6 feet distance between folks also means that we've had to modify what the number of people within our spaces looks like. And so what that could mean is if Chris and I both live on campus, and I'm going to visit Chris at his residence hall because we both live in an AU owned or operated building, Chris can have one guest in his room at a time, as can I. And so that's, again, following that 6 feet space. While some of our residence hall rooms are some of the bigger ones that I've seen from places that I've worked at, it's still not going to get you much past that one other person in that space to adhere to those guidelines. And so students are going to be welcome to use, in some of our spaces, the kitchen spaces or the lounge spaces, to have maybe a handful of people within those space. And all of those lounges and kitchens are marked with the appropriate number of folks who are permitted in that space at one time. So you don't have to remember it all at once. And we really just ask that folks are being really thoughtful and conscious about themselves through the process. I think part of the other piece about programming, Karen, that I think we're going to see is, I think as March already starts to get too hot for me personally, and we're going to see that weather becomes better, and we will likely start to see some shift in more activity being offered outside in some capacity, even if we're still physically distant. And we were able to take advantage of that this fall with the small number of students that we did have living with us in emergency housing, that we were to offer some outdoor programs like a self-defense course with our AUPD, one of our AUPD captains, which was really fantastic. And so we're not looking to keep you away from each other. We're just looking for that engagement to be really thoughtful, as you have been up until this point in time when you return.
Thanks, Ashley. It really would help if we had crystal balls, right? Because boy, oh boy, this has been hard to imagine. I'm so glad that you had the chance to really get to observe what students have been doing in the halls in the emergency housing setup. I think that's probably telling us a lot. And I know we're all hearing about what is working well on other campuses, so that's great. And Ashley, as you were talking there at the end about some of the other events that we have been hosting for students, these small scale events, I'm wondering, Colin, can you please post into the chat the link for the Campus Life website where we have the resources for students who are in the DC area? So families, whether your student is living on campus or off, there will be a number of activities that we're going to scale up as the weather warms, and your student will be able to find them all at that link that Colin is about to post for us. Chris, I have a couple other questions that came in for you. These are kind of like running all over the map, but they're all in your house. So
I love it.
One is, how is billing going to work if students aren't going to be able to get their assignment at the end of January after those spring bills have started to roll out?
That's a great question, and we understand that's a unique situation compared to let's say a normal school year, a normal semester, right, where you would receive your tuition bill and your housing bill and your dining bill before the semester begins. So you are right now, you should have already, because I imagine most students have registered for classes already for spring semester. So you should have registered for classes and you already have your tuition bill, and you very likely have already perhaps paid your tuition bill, right? So that is going to be to have happened. And then after you receive your room assignment in the end of January, a week later, you're going to be billed for the housing part, for the dining part, as well as for the health insurance part, should you choose to have the health insurance if you didn't have it waived. And so you're going to be receiving all those 3 bills in the first week of February, and they'll be in your account. And so then you go back in and pay those bills before you move in. It's very important, and we've added a note on the website that students plan financially for this, and that's why we posted the amounts, the cost of this residential experience, right? The housing costs, the dining costs, and the student health insurance cost, if you're utilizing the university health insurance. And so that is really important, because a semester's worth of financial aid or financial costs is already what you're receiving at the beginning. And so you're very likely, because you don't have the housing bill yet and the dining bill and the insurance bill, that you're going to be receiving a larger refund right now in the beginning of January before these other bills come up. And so please make sure you take that into account and make your financial preparation so that you're able to have that amount to pay for the charges that will come into your account in the first week of February.
That is a great point. It sounds to me like, folks, you're going to want to be checking your student's bill on a fairly regular basis this semester. It's going to be a little atypical, right? Colin, I'm going to ask if you can go ahead and put the link to the proxy access information so that if you haven't already been granted access to view your student's bill, this website will show you how to have your students set you up for that. Chris, another one coming your way. Mini fridges. How are we handling it for the mini-mester?
Students will have the option of renting a micro fridge. And so we'll have that information available on our website once we have those details finalized. It'll of course be, we're working with the company so that it's of course a lesser rate than it is a full semester, but we'll have that option available for students. Ashley just sent me a little message, and I'll share with everyone that maybe we'll have smaller fridges because it is a smaller term, but.
Like we've all had some long days here. And similarly, like I know that there have been questions, and it sounded like housing had been shifting some of the restrictions around the appliances that students could have. They can find all that information on the housing website, right?
Yes, they will be able to find that information on the housing website. We'll have that available for them.
And that's at the same link right down here. Chris, I have another logistics question for you. You ready? So
please.
When we were planning to bring students back in the fall, we were really encouraging families to go ahead and ship their belongings in advance. Is that something that we're recommending now? Is that even still an option?
Yeah. So again, the main answer to that question is it'll all be on the website. Number two, we will have an option for students to ship their items to campus. Because we know that facilitates their arrival. We know that makes it easy for them to move in. They don't have to bring as many items. We know many students may be flying to campus as opposed to perhaps driving if they're coming from afar. So we will be providing more information to students about their arrival. We can certainly guarantee that we will be encouraging students to bring I would say limited amounts of items, not usually as they would be bringing in the beginning of the fall semester, which is, to stay for the whole school year. So we'll be highly advising you to pack lightly and to be smart with your wardrobe as you're coming in March and kind of a seasonal change in DC.
Great points. Yep, folks, pack light. Watching families move out at the end of last semester was not pretty. So that's the parent-to-parent tip that I'm offering up here now. Ashley, laughing, I'm going to turn it back to you. Can you talk a little bit more about what you're currently thinking around the RA role? Because I know that nationally, a lot of campuses are really trying to revisit this so that they can make sure that their student staff are safe. Where are we at now? Like, where do you think this is going?
Sure, that's a really good question. I think in an ideal world, my job, my main focus is on our student staff and our residential communities. And so not having those two things for me personally is terrible. And I wish I had them all with me right now. And so I think, nationally and even, right around the corner at some of our colleagues, as we've been thinking about what can this look like for us, there's lots of variation between what the experience for student staff have been if they return to campus this fall. Some institutions had very high modifications to what their role responsibility was, and that caused a different level of stress and anxiety for student staff who were accustomed to performing a particular role that was modified. And for others, they maintained sort of their same status quo in their role and found that was really challenging for students with the demands of being virtual. And so, and then we had some colleagues who have no student staff with them, and that we know has proved a different type of stress and strain, both for those student staff who aren't positioned anymore and for the students who were looking to have that peer-to-peer guidance in some ways. And so right now, what we're really looking to do is to get a sense from our student staff who would have been placed into an RA role for this fall to say, what are you thinking? what could this look like for you? Would you be interested in returning to an experience like this? I think if we were to be positioned to bring some student staff back, I think what we know is those expectations on them from us as a department would certainly be modified, and we would be expecting them to predominantly perform their roles in a virtual manner. Does that mean that we would say to Anne Marie, don't go meet with Karen in person, don't have a conversation in person? Absolutely not. But I think we have a responsibility as a department to make sure that our student staff all feel like they could equitably perform their role if they were to be able to come back. And so one of those guarantees for us is by saying, you can perform this in the same way that you've been performing all semester long in terms of your academics and your other commitments. And so we are exploring that option. I don't have an answer on it for sure with 100% certainty in this moment, but I am hopeful that we will be able to offer an experience that does include some level of student staff in proximity to our residents, because we know how invaluable that connection can be.
Excellent, thank you for that. Anne Marie, I'm gonna head back to you on dining. So we always have students with a whole range of dietary needs and restrictions. What should they be doing and what might they expect?
So first about what they should do is the same office that handles the housing accommodations will they should reach out to for any accommodations for dining. We maintain a registered dietitian on staff. She has been here even through our fall semester, working with our students that we've had here on campus, providing counseling to them virtually, or also being able to offer classes. We've done things in conjunction with Residential Life for teaching kitchens. She's taught them how to make quick things, cooking on their own, but since they will be living on campus, to also help them in what kind of things should I have, what are the healthy items, what are the best things for me to be eating when I have an exam or I'm feeling stressed, what should my diet look like? So I think we're touching all avenues of making sure that our students maintain nutritionally sound and that we can meet their dietary needs.
Excellent, thank you. I know we just had a question too, which is a good one, so I'm going to share it to the whole group here, around UPass and families. The very popular UPass, we have been trying to see if our local public transportation system here, that's WMATA, if they could honor it for the spring, but like most other transit systems across the country, they're really suffering financially and they're not able to make it work for us right now. So no UPass for the spring semester. We continue to advocate for it to be up and running again for students in the fall. So stay tuned for details. Can students leave campus? Yeah, right, they can leave campus. This includes, they can go home and visit you too, but folks, the travel restrictions for the district continue to shift as conditions change. So I'm gonna ask Colin, I'm hopeful that you can pull up the DC coronavirus website to put up in the chat. And families, that's a really good place to try to stay as current as we are with what those travel advisories are looking like, with the operating status of things like the Smithsonian or restaurants or group gathering sizes. I mean, it's really helpful, and everything that we do needs to fit in line with the government of the District of Columbia. Ashley, I'm gonna come back to you. There's a lot of questions around what we might be offering in terms of like a welcome week, and we've got a very long move-in period here, and I know that we still can't have large group gatherings. Any sense of what we think we might be able to offer, and maybe when we'd know more?
Sure, great questions. I think first, I think that there's certainly something that is still in development, right? And again, we're really looking to be aligned with exactly what's sort of being expressed on those DC guidelines around coronavirus, and particularly in terms of gathering. And one of the unique things about Welcome Week or Welcome Experience is that it typically tends to be for all students. And so we'll be looking to figure out what can we provide on campus that can supplement anything else that's being provided by some of our campus partners. And so I think a lot of the highlights of a Welcome Week when it comes to sort of the baseline logistics are helping students acclimate to the campus, figure out the logistics of where are what things on campus that I may need regular access to. As you can imagine, one of those things will be, where do I how do I sign up for my coronavirus testing, and where do I then go do that on campus, and where do I get my COVID test completed? And so we'll be certainly looking to build in some experiential pieces so that students feel like they're grounded when they come to campus, because what we don't want is to have folks feeling like it takes multiple weeks to acclimate. And for some of us, that would be true. I think that would be true for myself. But to adjust and then feel like I'm just getting the hang of it and now heading back out. And so those details are certainly being refined with some of our colleagues across campus as it relates to what might those offerings look like. But we're excited to be building out something that will be able to be adapted in some capacity for our students to be acclimated when they come to campus.
Excellent. Thanks, Ashley. Okay, so some other questions that came in were related to testing. And I do have staff on standby here for this session tonight who've been helping to get me some more updated answers. So here's what we've got. Testing, which companies and labs are we using, and what's the turnaround time looking like? Well, folks, we are reevaluating our contracts with our testing providers. We're finalizing those details, so we're really not at liberty to share with you right now, tonight, who that testing partner is going to be. We do know that the turnaround time has been a challenge for a lot of area testing facilities, and it's a priority for us, right? Because it's not meaningful if we can't get quick responses, right? We do expect that when students come back to campus, there's going to be kind of like a rush on the demand on this. So the testing turnaround time in the initial run is probably going to take a little longer. And we're hoping that we're able to get on track with results within 24 hours once we get past those initial big rushes. In terms of who's eligible or what those requirements are going to look like, folks, we are putting the dots on the I's and we're crossing the T's right now as we're going through what those testing protocols are going to look like in the spring. It's a very different setup as we ramp up to bringing more and more students back. So there's the category of students that are going to be requested to be tested twice a week, and those are the students living in our properties on campus or that are leased properties. And then there's other categories around faculty, staff, students who may live off campus and want to visit for classes, students who need to use some of our dedicated labs on campus, and those details are all forthcoming. They'll be in writing and we'll make them clear and accessible. And also the type of testing that we're using. It's the saliva PCR, if I got that right. I get it wrong all the time, but the saliva PCR test is what we're looking at. Chris, I had another specific one for you. Oh, right. So, you know, in the fall, we were talking about trying to make sure we had students housed in rooms that had private bathrooms. And now we're talking about using the communal spaces and not using those suite-based rooms. Can you talk a little bit more about our thinking on this?
Sure, definitely. And that is a great question, because I know several students and families and even colleagues have asked questions, and it's been a developing issue, of course. So what we have learned from best practice, from colleagues in other universities that opened and had thousands of students living in their student housing, that the community spaces, like community bathrooms, were not the locations where the virus was being transferred. Because students are not remaining long periods of time in close proximity to others within community bathrooms. Transmission is happening in students, especially outside of the residence halls, in social gatherings, in indoor spaces. Large amounts of students in close proximity. We saw that in the fall semester. I'm sure that many of you, family members, as well as students that are on this call, heard on the news about many students having off-campus parties, gatherings off campus, on campus, sometimes in rooms, and packing students in one space. And so that is where it's been observed where the virus has been being transferred between individuals. Transferring cases of virus transferring in community bathrooms, I would say that from all the information that we looked at, There was no cases or very few pieces of information that we found anything related to that. And so even the advice from the Department of Health of DC, information from guidance from the CDC does not dictate that students have to have their own bathroom to be protected from the virus. Those elements that we've enumerated here and have talked about the whole semester, right? Hygiene, distancing, mask wearing, the added elements that we have of testing, all of those are elements that frame our structure of a safe community. And the private bathrooms are not an essential element here to ensure that we have a safe community. There's a lot at stake here from the individual behavior of the student in the proper hygiene and staying distance, as well as mask wearing and following the other protocols of campus. So in a long explanation, Karen, that is the reason why we are comfortable with the choice of one student per bedroom, as well as community bathrooms.
Awesome, thanks, that's very helpful. Anne-Marie, so we've talked a little bit about that move-in window for students into their rooms. Can you help us understand what we might expect for when dining services will be fully ramped up and operational, and what options might there be for students in the meantime? Like if they come in the first day that a student can move on to campus, where can they find food?
Okay, great question, Karen. So full ramp of dining services on campus will go into effect on March 10th. So from March 4th through 9th, students will get their meal plans. It will be there for them. They can use their Eagle Bucks at that time if they'd like for off-campus merchants. As I mentioned, we have a variety of merchants. We have a program with Grubhub that they can use Grubhub, and then if they go to Grubhub Plus, they don't even have to pay for the delivery. And that's something you can even be using now, students. So jump on that now, even while you're home, and your family can use it too. So you can be saving some money. But there are a lot of options on, as I mentioned, we have quite a few vendors in the Tenleytown, right around AU, and also in other areas of DC, because we do know our students explore. They want to go near the monuments, they want to go near Georgetown. So we have places there that they don't have to worry about. I'm carrying my wallet. I got my AU ID card that I need, and it takes me everywhere. It's my key to get around the city.
And I know that our students are loving the Grubhub. Colin can give us a shout out, but that's what I give him for thank you gifts, is his Grubhub cards. So, okay. Chris, I'm going back to you. Is there any benefit for a student turning in their application like January 5th versus the 14th? Is there a priority order here? How are we running those room selection assignments?
Sure, that's a great question. So in terms of the date of application, there's no priority if you apply, at 12:01 of the day that it opens, or the morning of the day that it closes. There's no priority in those days. We're giving you an ample window of time so that if you go on vacation, you want to completely check out of your email and in the internet during this break, which we hope you will, because we know you've spent so much time on Zoom. It's totally fine. You can put an alarm for January 10th and apply for housing. I'm even getting messages right now from colleagues saying that they want to apply for housing. And so it's totally fine. Within that time frame, you can apply anytime. Okay. Then how is it that we're going to select the students? The priority are going to be first-year students. And we understand, and we know based on our research, we know that not all first-year students will likely want to come to campus or be able to for different reasons. Some may be in different locations. Some may not want to, may find that remaining at home is the best option for them. And so we're very comfortable with the number that we have right now. And we believe that we'll be able to welcome all the first-year students that apply. If we have enough vacant spaces in this group that we haven't been able to fill with all the first year students, we'll then go to the sophomores that have applied, and then we'll bring in the sophomores that have applied. If we have more vacant spaces, we'll go into the juniors and then to the seniors. So as we've said several times, our priority are for the first year students, have not lived on campus, and want that residential experience here in Washington, D.C. on our campus. That was our second part to that question, Karen.
I think that covered it. And you even got ahead and anticipated some of the other questions that have come in.
Hey.
Anybody with students who have an acute housing need, they should, they email emergencyhousing@american.edu, is that right?
They can, if it's an acute housing need, so meaning if a student feels that their current circumstances and their living environment is no longer conducive to their ability to maintain a health and safety living environment where they are currently, or they're housing insecure in some capacity, what you can actually do is we can direct you right just to the same email that's right here with us for housing@american.edu, because that emergency housing email that you may have heard before or seen before, or perhaps have it in your records, get rid of that. It's not active right now. And so what we can do is we can route you, any of us, and if you forget and you're like, I remember Ashley's name because their last name's long and that's confusing, I can find that on the website, send it my way, and we'll make sure that it gets into the right hands to have that application reviewed and processed.
See, I'm glad I asked. Thanks for clarifying. Okay, so we've talked about application process, timing on billing. We've talked about dining, what we think orientation or welcome week kind of stuff might look like, a bit about how you can indicate your preferences for living in proximity to people that you might have met. All this is leading towards where we go next, right? So as I mentioned earlier, we're really working on trying to resume normal operations as normal as we can for the fall, and this plays a big part in this. So you may have heard us also mention that we're trying to ramp up our activities for summer. And so this is on a couple different fronts. It's making more classes available for undergrad students than we typically have, and we're doing that in droves. Working with our partners in financial aid to figure out how students can pay for this over the summer. But it also means freeing up some spaces for students who might want to live with us for the summer. Is there anything, Chris, that you can tell us now about what a transition might look like for students who are actively thinking about staying with us for summer housing?
Yeah, Karen, that's a great question. We, as Karen mentioned, we know that some students are interested in spending the summer in Washington, D.C. And so we are working to develop options for a summer residential experience for those students who wish to remain on campus over the summer. So please stay tuned for more information. We hope that in the start of the spring semester, we will be able to provide information to you on two elements. One is what Karen was asking about summer housing. And the second element is about on-campus housing for next fall. So usually in a usual year, in a pre-COVID time, we would be already announcing and advertising for our what we call return student room selection, so the housing selection for students to for their second year, for their third year, fourth year at AU. And so we'll be having those two elements available for you. We hope that at the beginning of the semester, we'll be able to provide you more information on that. But please, if you are interested, stay tuned. I would advise you for both of those, if you're interested in summer housing, as well as if you're interested in housing on campus next year, and you are first year right now, or you're a student that wants to be here, don't go out and sign housing leases on your own yet. Please wait for information from us about on-campus housing, both for the summer as well as for next fall.
That is excellent. Thank you. Well, families, over 200 of you joined us tonight for this call, and you've been firing those questions off. So we've been trying to answer them as we go through. I know we didn't answer everybody's questions. I want to encourage you to continue to check the housing website for the frequently asked questions there. Your student, once they apply for the process, will also continue to get updated and regular updates from the housing team with all the details that they're going to need to move in March. And you're welcome to email the housing team that you've met here tonight, or to the team with parent and family engagement at auparent@american.edu. Families, again, we'll send you a link to the recording of this session later. And we want to thank you for your attentiveness, for your great questions, and for all your patience and support this year. Have a great one. Enjoy your holidays, and we'll see you in the new year. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.